I am Sarah Miller, 34, returning to my childhood home this Christmas after 5 long years away. My stomach's in knots as I drive down the familiar streets of Boston. I've changed since I left, built something incredible that nobody in my family knows about yet. They've always overlooked me, squeezed between my brilliant brother and my perfect little sister. But this year will be different. This time, I'm not coming empty-handed. I've got something to show them that will change everything. Before I tell you how my family's faces dropped when I revealed what I'd built while they weren't watching, drop a comment sharing your own holiday family drama. Trust me, this one's worth staying for. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button because we all need to know we're not alone in family struggles. Growing up in the Miller household meant living in a perpetual competition I never signed up for. My parents, both successful professionals, Mum a university dean and Dad a renowned surgeon, believed achievement was the only currency worth having. They created a family ecosystem where validation came through accomplishments, nothing else. My older brother, Daniel, was the golden child, with his perfect grades and impressive academic awards. By 16, he'd already mapped out his path to a top-tier law school. Then there was my younger sister, Emily, the baby of the family, whose musical talents and vibrant personality made her the family darling. And somewhere in the awkward middle was me, Sarah, the one whose report cards earned shrugs rather than celebration, whose interests seemed perpetually misaligned with family expectations. I discovered my passion for architectural design in middle school, spending hours sketching floor plans and building miniature models, while other kids played sports or hung out at the mall. When I excitedly showed my father a detailed blueprint for a dream house I'd created, he glanced at it for 3 seconds before asking if I'd finished my Latin homework. "Architecture is fine as a hobby, Sarah, but it doesn't build real careers," he'd said, despite this being the late 2000s when urban development was already booming. My mother wasn't much better. "Wouldn't you rather join Emily's choir? You spend too much time alone with your blueprints," she'd suggest, completely missing that I found genuine joy in creating tangible spaces. During family dinners, Daniel's pre-law accomplishments and Emily's concert schedule dominated conversation, while my design competition wins went unmentioned. The tipping point came during my senior year of high school. I'd been accepted to MIT with a partial scholarship for architectural engineering, an achievement I was immensely proud of. At dinner that night, my father spent 20 minutes discussing Daniel's Ivy League options before turning to me. "MIT's expensive. The state university has adequate engineering classes and wouldn't put us in debt." The message was clear. My dreams weren't worth investing in. I went to MIT anyway, taking out loans and working part-time jobs. Those 4 years gave me distance and perspective. I flourished among people who actually valued my talents and ideas. After graduation, when I announced I was moving to New York City instead of returning to Boston, my parents seemed almost relieved. Less disappointment to manage under their roof. Over the next 5 years, our contact became increasingly minimal. Monthly phone calls dwindled to holiday check-ins and occasional texts. I'd send birthday and Christmas gifts, receive brief thank you messages, and that was it. They knew I was doing something with buildings, but never asked specifics. I stopped offering details after too many glazed eyes and subject changes. What my family didn't know was that during those 5 years of relative silence, I'd co-founded Urban Canvas Designs, a startup specializing in sustainable urban revitalization projects. We'd started in my tiny apartment with 3 drafting tables and a vision. 3 years in, we'd secured major city contracts nationwide. By year 5, we were valued at $80 million, with acquisition offers rolling in weekly. My playing with buildings had built an empire. I hadn't told my family about my success, partly because they never asked, but also because I wanted recognition for who I was, not what I'd achieved. But after 5 years away, my grandmother, Eleanor, the only family member who'd ever shown genuine interest in my passion, called personally to insist I come home for Christmas. "Life's too short for stubborn pride, Ray," she said, using my childhood nickname. "Come home this year for me." How could I refuse her? So, here I was, pulling into the driveway of my childhood home. Its familiar colonial architecture was decorated with the same Christmas lights pattern my father had installed 20 years ago. The house hadn't changed, but I certainly had. I stepped out of my rental car, wearing a simple but obviously expensive cashmere sweater and designer jeans, not to show off, but because these were now my normal clothes. My hair was styled professionally. I carried myself with the confidence of someone who regularly pitched to city councils, and the nervous girl who'd left Boston had been replaced by a woman who knew her worth. My mother opened the door before I could knock, her critical eyes immediately scanning me from head to toe. "Sarah, you're finally here. You look different. Have you lost weight or gained some? Something's changed." Her standard greeting, an observation that managed to be both a compliment and criticism simultaneously. My father appeared behind her, offering a stiff half hug. "The prodigal daughter returns. How's the building business treating you? Still sketching?" He chuckled, as though he'd made a clever joke. Daniel and his wife were already inside with their 2 children, and Emily arrived shortly after me with her new fiancé. Hugs were exchanged, surface-level pleasantries offered. My 6-year-old niece didn't recognize me at all, and my 4-year-old nephew hid behind his father's leg when I approached. "They're just shy," Daniel explained. Though we both knew the truth, I was essentially a stranger to them. Despite the awkwardness, I felt a flutter of hope. This was family, after all. Surely there was still a place for me here. Maybe this Christmas would be the beginning of a new chapter in our relationship, one where they finally saw me clearly. As I carried my suitcase upstairs, I clung to that hope, ignoring the little voice reminding me that optimism about my family had only led to disappointment before. The first hint that nothing had fundamentally changed came during lunch. We gathered around the kitchen table, the same oak piece that had witnessed countless family dynamics over the years, and I attempted to join the conversation naturally. "So, I've been working on some interesting projects lately. Our firm actually helps cities revitalize forgotten neighborhoods while—" "Pass the salt, would you, Sarah?" my mother interrupted, turning immediately to Emily. "Now, tell everyone about your concert tour plans. We've been thinking about renting the Symphony Hall for your debut." "Sarah, you wouldn't believe how beautiful Emily sounded at her last recital." I passed the salt, my unfinished sentence hanging in the air, replaced by 20 minutes of discussion about orchestral arrangements and travel schedules. When I tried again during a conversation lull, my father glanced at his watch mid-sentence. "Speaking of business," he pivoted, turning to my brother. "Daniel, how's the new corporate mergers case coming along? The firm partners must be impressed with your closing arguments." And just like that, I was 14 again, my voice evaporating from family discourse as though it had never existed. Later that afternoon, I noticed my mother setting the dinner table for the evening meal. 6 places, not 7. When I quietly pointed out the missing setting, she blinked in surprise. "Oh, I still set the table for our usual number. Force of habit, I suppose. It's been so long since you've been home, I forgot to count you." She laughed, as though this were an understandable oversight, rather than a painfully symbolic exclusion. During dinner preparation, my mother served everyone their favorite dishes. Daniel's preferred roast beef, Emily's special pasta primavera, even accommodations for my sister-in-law's vegan diet. When the mushroom casserole appeared, something I'd mentioned disliking since childhood due to a texture aversion, I politely declined. "Still picky about food, Sarah?" my mother sighed. "I forgot about your preferences. There's bread if you're still hungry." After dinner, my father suggested everyone relax in the living room while the women cleaned up, his traditional division of labor that had always irked me. In the kitchen, I attempted small talk with my mother and sister. "How's your design job going anyway?" Emily asked, the first family member to actually inquire about my work. A small victory. "It's going really well, actually. We've expanded to—" "Sarah, you're rinsing those plates all wrong," my mother interrupted. "The food particles will clog the disposal. You always were a bit careless with housework. Thank goodness your career doesn't require domestic skills." Later that evening, I excused myself to unpack in my old bedroom, only to find the space transformed into a disorganized storage room. Boxes filled with holiday decorations, old files, and miscellaneous household items occupied every surface. The twin bed remained but was piled with winter coats. My old posters and photographs had been removed, the walls now bare except for a faded rectangle where my college diploma once hung. "We needed the space," my mother explained when I inquired. "Since you're hardly ever here, Daniel's room is kept ready for when they visit with the children, and Emily still stays over sometimes. There's still a bed for you. Just move those coats." Curious, I checked my siblings' former rooms. Daniel's remained a shrine to his adolescence. Trophies displayed prominently, law school pennant on the wall, photos preserved. Emily's room had been moderately updated, but maintained as a functional bedroom with her personal touches intact. While searching for extra hangers in the hall closet, I discovered a box labeled Sarah School Stuff. Inside were my academic awards, design competition trophies, and the framed article from when I'd won the National Architecture Challenge, all items that had once been displayed but now were haphazardly packed away, some damaged from careless storage. That night, I called my friend Chloe, who'd become more family to me than my blood relatives. They haven't changed at all, so it's like I'm still the invisible middle child, except now I'm an invisible adult. My brother talked about his law practice for 45 minutes straight, and no one asked a single question about my life. "Maybe you should just tell them about Urban Canvas," Chloe suggested. "They might finally give you the recognition you deserve." I sighed, looking around the storage room that was once my personal space. "That's not why I came. I don't want them to suddenly value me because I'm successful. I want them to value me because I'm their daughter." "I understand," Chloe replied gently. "But remember why you're there. For your grandmother, not for their approval. You don't need it anymore, Ray. You know your worth, even if they don't see it yet." After hanging up, I lay awake on my coat-covered bed, wondering if coming home had been a mistake. The familiar feeling of invisibility was creeping back, threatening to diminish the confident woman I'd become. Perhaps some family dynamics were simply too entrenched to change. Christmas Eve brought the extended family invasion, a tradition that had always amplified the Miller household dynamics. My father's brother, Uncle Thomas, arrived with his wife and 3 children. My mother's sister, Aunt Susan, came with her husband and their college-age daughter. Grandmother Eleanor was the last to arrive, her entrance immediately brightening my mood. "There's my Ray," she exclaimed, her 82-year-old arms opening for a genuine hug. "Let me look at you, successful and beautiful. You're glowing, dear." For the first time since arriving, I felt seen. Grandmother Eleanor had always been different from the rest of the family, genuinely curious, never comparing, always supportive. She'd sent me encouraging cards throughout college and was the only relative who remembered my birthday without social media reminders. The living room buzzed with conversation clusters as appetizers circulated. I attempted to join various groups, but each time the discussion shifted away from anything related to my life. When my cousin Alex asked what I was doing these days, my brief explanation about sustainable urban design was met with glazed eyes. "So basically playing with blocks all day," he concluded with a laugh. "Guess some of us never outgrow our hobbies, huh? Must be nice not having real adult responsibilities." Alex, 3 years my junior and still working part-time at his father's accounting office while finding himself, apparently considered his situation the epitome of adult responsibility. Aunt Susan cornered me by the fireplace, her infamous interrogation beginning predictably. "No ring yet, Sarah? You know, at 34 your options narrow considerably. Your biological clock isn't getting any younger." She glanced meaningfully at my flat abdomen. "Your cousin Chloe is already pregnant with her second, and she's 4 years younger than you." Before I could respond, my mother joined the conversation. "Sarah's always been career-focused. Some women just aren't meant for family life." The way she said career, as though my profession were an eccentric phase rather than a calling, made my teeth clench. "I'm focused on building something meaningful," I replied evenly. "And I date. I just haven't met anyone I want to spend my life with yet." "Well, beggars can't be choosers at a certain point," Aunt Susan responded with false sympathy. "Not everyone gets the luxury of waiting for perfection." Dinner preparations saved me from further commentary on my apparently tragic spinsterhood. In the kitchen, I found Grandmother Eleanor struggling with her new tablet, a gift from Daniel that no one had bothered to help her set up. "These new-fangled contraptions," she sighed. "Your brother said it's simple, but nothing happens when I tap the screen." I sat beside her, gently taking the tablet. "The screen protector is still on, Grandma. Here, let me help you set everything up." For 20 minutes, I patiently configured her device, explaining each feature in terms she could understand, setting up shortcuts for her most used functions, and increasing the text size for easier reading. Her genuine appreciation warmed me. "You've always had a gift for making complicated things simple, Ray," she said, patting my hand. "Tell me about your work in New York. Are you happy?" That simple question, the only one any family member had asked about my emotional state, rather than my marital status or superficial career details, nearly brought tears to my eyes. I told her about urban canvas designs, in terms of the problems we solved and the communities we helped, rather than valuation or acquisition offers. "Your grandfather would be so proud," she said when I finished. "He always said you had a special spark, different from the others but no less bright." Our moment was interrupted by my mother calling everyone to dinner. As we entered the dining room, I overheard my parents speaking in the hallway. "Daniel's firm is really taking off," my father was saying proudly. "The senior partners are considering his proposal for the new legal research initiative, 7 figures in funding, and Emily's fiancé comes from such good stock," my mother replied. "His family's connections will open so many doors for her. At least 2 of our children made good choices. Sarah seems fine," my father added, lowering his voice. "Still doing that building thing. I worry she's just drifting through life without direction. No family prospects, living alone across the country. Where did we go wrong with her?" I froze in the hallway, their words hitting like physical blows. After 5 years of building something meaningful, after all my hard work and success, I was still the family disappointment, the child they'd gone wrong with. Christmas Eve dinner was served on my mother's best china, the table beautifully decorated with candles and holly. Before eating, my father stood for the traditional family prayer, something I'd forgotten about after years away. "Lord, we thank you for this food and for family gathered here. We're grateful for Daniel's continued success in law, upholding justice as you would have us do. We're thankful for Emily's engagement and the joyful union ahead. We're blessed by the children present who carry our legacy forward," he continued, mentioning every adult by name, along with their blessings of the year, except me. Whether intentional or another oversight, the exclusion stung publicly in a way the private conversation had not. Midway through dinner, I excused myself to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. Staring at my reflection, I saw the confident CEO I'd become starting to crack, revealing the insecure middle child beneath. For a moment, I considered packing my bags and leaving that night, making up an emergency at work, escaping back to the world where I was valued. Instead, I splashed cold water on my face and straightened my shoulders. I hadn't built my company by running from challenges. Before eating, my father stood for the traditional family prayer, something I'd forgotten about after years away. "Lord, we thank you for this food and for family gathered here. We're grateful for Daniel's continued success in law, upholding justice as you would have us do. We're thankful for Emily's engagement and the joyful union ahead. We're blessed by the children present who carry our legacy forward," he continued, mentioning every adult by name along with their blessings of the year, except me. Whether intentional or another oversight, the exclusion stung publicly in a way the private conversation had not. Midway through dinner, I excused myself to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. Staring at my reflection, I saw the confident CEO I'd become starting to crack, revealing the insecure middle child beneath. For a moment, I considered packing my bags and leaving that night, making up an emergency at work, escaping back to the world where I was valued. Instead, I splashed cold water on my face and straightened my shoulders. I hadn't built my company by running from challenges. I'd come for Grandmother Eleanor, and I would stay for her. Tomorrow was Christmas Day, the gift exchange that had always crystallized my place in the family hierarchy. I decided to let it play out exactly as they planned, without intervention or explanation. The truth would reveal itself, one way or another. Christmas morning in the Miller household followed the same choreography it had for decades. Everyone gathered in the living room by 8 o'clock, still in pajamas, clutching mugs of my mother's special spiced cider. The fireplace crackled with fresh logs, and Daniel's children vibrated with excitement on the carpet near the tree. Christmas music played softly from the speaker system my father had installed last year. Apparently, some traditions were allowed to evolve with technology. I took a seat on the window bench, slightly removed from the main seating arrangement. From this vantage point, I could observe the familiar ritual about to unfold. My father, wearing his Santa hat, the only whimsical item he permitted himself all year, took his position beside the mountain of wrapped presents under the tree. "Let's see what Santa brought this year," he announced, adjusting his reading glasses as he examined the first tag. The gift distribution always followed the same order, youngest to oldest, with multiple rounds until all presents were distributed. My nephew went first, tearing into a large box containing a child-sized electric tractor he could actually drive. His sister received a lavish dollhouse complete with furniture and miniature family. Both children accumulated piles of toys, books, and clothes as the distribution continued. Next came my sister Emily, who received a designer watch from our parents. "To match your engagement ring, darling." An expensive cashmere scarf from Daniel and his wife, and various smaller gifts from extended family. Her fiancé Mark received top-shelf bourbon, tickets to a Broadway show, and a leather briefcase, immediately accepted into the gift hierarchy, despite this being his first Christmas with the family. Daniel and his wife collected their bounty next, a weekend getaway at a luxury resort, matching high-end golf clubs, kitchen appliances they'd requested, and smaller personal items. My brother received special fountain pens from our father for those law firm networking events. My parents exchanged their gifts next, having clearly coordinated in advance. My mother unwrapped diamond earrings, while my father received an expensive leather jacket he'd been eyeing. Round after round, the presents dwindled beneath the tree. I kept waiting for my name to be called, for some acknowledgement of my presence. The extended family members exchanged their gifts. Even grandmother Eleanor received multiple packages: a new robe, slippers, framed family photos, and books. Finally, the area beneath the tree was empty, except for discarded wrapping paper. Everyone sat, admiring their gifts, comparing and exclaiming over each other's treasures. The realization settled over me slowly. Then all at once there was nothing for me, not a single package, card, or token. In a room full of people who shared my blood, not one had thought to include me in the tradition at the heart of our gathering. The silence stretched uncomfortably as this fact became evident to others. My nephew, with a child's innocent confusion, looked around and asked, "Didn't Aunt Sarah get any presents?" The room froze. All eyes turned to me, expressions ranging from embarrassment to discomfort to, most painfully, lack of surprise. This wasn't an oversight. They simply hadn't expected to include me. "Is there anything for me?" I asked quietly, hating how small my voice sounded. My mother laughed awkwardly, waving her hand dismissively. "Oh, we forgot you weren't coming until last minute. After 5 years away, we weren't sure you'd make it. We'll get something later, of course." My father cleared his throat. "The stores will be open again tomorrow. We'll pick something up then." Aunt Susan, perhaps feeling genuine pity, rummaged in her oversized purse. "I have a lovely scented candle I received at a White Elephant exchange. You're welcome to have it, Sarah." She held out a generic green candle, price tag still attached. "No, thank you," I said quietly but firmly. "That's very kind but unnecessary." The awkwardness hung heavy for exactly 17 seconds before my mother jumped up. "Who's ready for breakfast? I've made my special strata casserole." Just like that, the moment passed. The family collectively decided to ignore what had happened, filing toward the dining room with their new treasures, conversation shifting to breakfast and afternoon plans. No apologies, no genuine concern, just the familiar pattern of overlooking Sarah. I remained seated by the window, allowing myself to fully absorb what had just transpired. This wasn't about materialism or gift expectations. This was about being erased from a family tradition, about being so thoroughly forgotten that not even a token effort had been made. After 5 years of distance, I'd returned to find I hadn't even been missed enough to warrant a Christmas card. Oddly, instead of pain, I felt clarity washing over me. This moment of absolute exclusion crystallized what I'd always sensed, but never fully acknowledged. I was an outsider in my own family, and no achievement or personal growth would ever change that fundamental reality. But unlike previous years, this realization didn't crush me. The difference between 34-year-old Sarah and the girl who'd left Boston was that I now knew my worth wasn't determined by their perception. I had built something remarkable, not just a successful company, but a life filled with people who genuinely valued me. As I helped carry dishes to the kitchen, a plan formed in my mind, not for revenge or dramatic confrontation, but for honest revelation. It was time to share who I'd become, not to prove my worth to them, but to claim my truth openly. If they couldn't see me after that, at least I would have stood fully in my reality. I excused myself briefly, retrieving an envelope from my suitcase upstairs. The moment for revelation was approaching, and for the first time since arriving, I felt absolutely certain of my next step. Christmas brunch unfolded with its usual orchestrated perfection. My mother's strata casserole, bacon, fresh fruit, and mimosas covered the dining table as family members filled their plates. Conversation flowed around me, Daniel discussing his firm's expansion plans, Emily showing photos of potential wedding venues on her phone. The gift exchange incident had been neatly packed away, like last year's ornaments, no longer worthy of mention. I sat quietly, the slim envelope resting on my lap beneath the table, waiting for the right moment. It came as my father raised his mimosa glass for an impromptu toast. "To family and success," he proclaimed. "To Daniel's legal research grant, to Emily and Mark's engagement, and to another prosperous Miller year ahead." As glasses clinked and sips were taken, I gently cleared my throat. "Since we're acknowledging achievements," I said, my voice steady, "I have something I'd like to share too." A brief silence fell over the table, the kind that forms when someone unexpected speaks up during a performance. I placed the envelope on the table and slid out a glossy business magazine, turning it to face the family. My picture was on the cover, under the headline, "Urban Revitalization's Rising Stars: How Sarah Miller's Urban Canvas Designs is Reshaping Cityscapes." "I've been meaning to tell you about my work," I continued, maintaining an even tone despite my racing heart. Urban Canvas Designs, the company I co-founded 4 years ago, was recently valued at $80 million. We specialize in sustainable urban development and community renewal. 15 major cities currently use our platforms, including, ironically, the one where Daniel's firm has its main office. I placed the magazine in the center of the table, then removed the second item from my envelope, a document showing the recent acquisition offer from a major real estate development corporation. The number at the bottom featured 8 digits. "We're considering this acquisition offer, though I'm leaning toward maintaining independence and expanding internationally next year." The silence around the table had transformed from dismissive to stunned. My mother's mouth opened and closed without producing sound. My father stared at the magazine cover as though it might be an elaborate practical joke. Daniel picked up the acquisition document, scrutinizing it with narrowed eyes. $80 million, my father finally managed. That's not possible. Your little building project." "That's amazing, Sarah," Grandmother Eleanor exclaimed, genuine pride lighting her face. "I always knew you were building something special." My mother's shock quickly recalibrated into revisionist history. "Well, we always encouraged your architectural interests, didn't we? I remember telling everyone how gifted you were with design." She reached across to squeeze my arm possessively. "My daughter, the CEO." "This is legitimate?" Daniel asked, still examining the document. "You actually built a company worth this much?" How did we not know about this? No one asked, I replied simply. When I tried to talk about my work, the conversation always changed direction. You should have told us more forcefully, my father countered, already reconstructing the narrative. How are we supposed to know if you kept it secret? This is life-changing information, Sarah. Life-changing for me, I corrected gently, my daily reality for the past 3 years. Emily, looking genuinely impressed, gestured toward the magazine. Can I see that? That's really you on the cover. As the magazine circulated, reactions crystallized along predictable lines. My father switched to business mode, asking about investment opportunities and growth projections. My mother began mentally rewriting family law to include her unwavering support of my architectural aspirations. My brother's competitive nature emerged as he compared his firm's funding to my company's valuation. Extended family members who'd barely spoken to me, all visits suddenly found me fascinating. I answered their questions calmly, neither inflating nor downplaying Urban Canvas's success. This wasn't about proving my superiority. It was simply about being seen accurately after years of invisibility. There's something else, I added when the initial shock had settled. In honor of Grandmother Eleanor, Urban Canvas Designs is making a $1 million donation to Boston Children's Hospital's new wing in the Miller family name. The announcement goes public next week. Grandmother Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. The Children's Hospital where your grandfather volunteered. Oh, Sarah. I nodded, reaching for her hand. You and Grandpa were always my true supporters. It seemed fitting. While this news sent another ripple of astonishment around the table, I retrieved a small stack of envelopes from my purse. I do have gifts, actually. I was waiting for the right moment. I distributed an envelope to each family member. Inside each was a personalized gift certificate. For my father, a custom-designed smart home automation system. For my mother, a complete digital archiving service for her lifelong photo collection. For Daniel, beta access to our new urban planning optimization platform. For Emily, a comprehensive music event planning technology suite. For my niece and nephew, educational design software accounts with substantial deposits toward future education. For Grandmother Eleanor, a specially designed tablet with health monitoring features and unlimited tech support. These aren't last-minute gifts, I explained. These are solutions I created specifically for each of you based on knowing who you are and what might make your lives better, because that's what I do. I solve problems with design and technology. A profound silence fell over the dining room as my words sank in. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. They had completely forgotten me in their gift-giving, while I had thoughtfully created something unique for each of them, despite years of emotional neglect. I don't need or want anything in return, I added softly. I just wanted you to finally see me, the real me, not who you assumed I was or who you wished I'd become. Grandmother Eleanor reached over to squeeze my hand, tears streaming down her lined face. In her eyes alone, I saw complete understanding, both of what this moment had cost me and what it was worth. The hours following my revelation unfolded in a series of conversations that ranged from awkward to surreal. The family dynamic, previously set in concrete, had been fundamentally disrupted. Like tectonic plates shifting, everyone struggled to find new footing in this altered landscape. My father predictably pivoted to business mode fastest, cornering me on the back porch where I'd escaped for a moment of quiet. He launched into questions about venture capital, expansion strategies, and, most transparently, investment opportunities. You should have come to me for startup advice, he said, conveniently forgetting his dismissal of my architectural aspirations. With my legal background and business contacts, I could have opened doors for you. I found the doors I needed, I replied gently, and learned to open them myself. His expression flickered between pride and frustration, torn between parental satisfaction at my success and the uncomfortable realization that this success had occurred entirely without his input or knowledge. We should set up a family investment opportunity, he pressed on. I have some capital I could move around, get in before that acquisition goes through. Our investor rounds closed last year, Dad, but thank you for the interest. My mother adopted a different strategy, historical revision. According to her newly constructed narrative, she'd always been my biggest champion. I always told your father you were special, she insisted, as she unnecessarily rearranged Christmas cookies on a tray. Remember how I bought you that architecture design book when you were 12? I saw your potential, even then. The book in question had actually been a birthday gift from grandmother Eleanor. My mother had expressed disappointment that I wanted such a boring present instead of the jewelry set she'd suggested. More disturbing was her immediate shift in how she presented me to extended family. Sarah is our architecture entrepreneur, she now announced proudly. She's being featured in business magazines. Show them the cover, Sarah. My brother's reaction was more complex. Initial disbelief gave way to subtle competitiveness. The legal field has different metrics for success than design, followed by reluctant respect. By late afternoon, he'd cornered me by the fireplace. So, you're really worth all that? He asked, lowering his voice. Like, personally? The company is valued at $80 million, I corrected. My stake is significant, but not the entirety. Still, he pressed, you must be... you're wearing a $1,200 sweater casually on Christmas. That tells me something. I smiled. Yes, I'm financially comfortable, Daniel. He nodded slowly, processing this information against decades of family mythology. I always thought you were just drifting. That's what Mum and Dad always said, that you needed to find direction. I found it. They just weren't looking where I was going. The most genuine connection came unexpectedly from my 14-year-old cousin Olivia, who sought me out while everyone else was watching a holiday movie. Want to learn design? She said without preamble. But Uncle Thomas says it's not a real career for women, that it's just a hobby until I get married. The familiar words sparked both pain and purpose within me. Your uncle said the same thing to me when I was about your age, but you did it anyway. I did it anyway. She twisted her hands nervously. Could you maybe show me how to start? I've been trying to teach myself with online tutorials, but it's hard without direction. For the next hour, I sat with Olivia in the quiet of the kitchen, showing her basic design concepts on my laptop and setting up resources she could access from home. I gave her my email address and promised to send her information about design camps for girls with a scholarship funded by me if her parents wouldn't support it. Don't let anyone decide your capacity based on their limited imagination, I told her, including family, especially family. The most difficult conversation came that evening, when my parents attempted an approximation of an apology during a brief awkward moment alone in the kitchen. We might have underestimated your career choice, my father began stiffly. It seems architectural design has become more viable than we anticipated. And we always wanted the best for you, my mother added. We pushed because we cared. Perhaps we should have listened more to what you wanted. Their words fell substantially short of a genuine acknowledgement of the pattern of dismissal and emotional neglect. This wasn't about my career choice. It was about my fundamental place in the family. But I recognized this halting attempt represented their maximum capacity for self-reflection. Thank you for saying that, I replied simply. I hope moving forward we can build a relationship based on who I actually am, not who you expected me to be. That night, I made the decision to leave a day early, not from anger or hurt, but from the clear-eyed recognition that I needed to return to my chosen family, the friends and colleagues who saw and valued me without the distorting lens of family history. As I packed, my sister Emily knocked tentatively on the storage room door. Of all the family reactions, hers had been the most subdued, watching, listening, processing. Were we really that terrible to you? She asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. The question's directness surprised me. Not terrible, I answered carefully. Just absent, like I was living in a house where all the mirrors were covered, invisible even to myself sometimes. She nodded slowly. I never realized. You were just Sarah, my quiet, design-obsessed big sister. Mom and Dad talked about you differently than they talked about Daniel and me, but I thought that was just because you were different. Different shouldn't mean less valuable. No, she agreed quietly. It shouldn't. She hesitated before adding, I'm sorry I didn't see it, or if I contributed to it. Of all the conversations that day, Emily's simple acknowledgement came closest to healing something within me, not because she had been the primary source of pain, but because her recognition was untainted by financial interest or revision attempts. She simply saw the truth and named it. Thank you for saying that, I said, and then offering a bridge. I'd like to know you better, Emily. The adult you, not just my little sister. Maybe we could talk more regularly, video calls or something. I'd like that, she replied with a genuine smile. I have a feeling I have a lot to learn from my big sister. As I fell asleep that night, I realized the day's revelation had served its purpose, not to humble my family or elevate myself, but to finally be seen clearly. The aftermath wasn't perfect reconciliation, but it was the beginning of something more honest. For some family members, that meant a chance at genuine connection. For others, it simply meant I could stop expecting what they were incapable of giving. Either way, I would sleep soundly, knowing I had finally stepped fully into my truth. Morning light filtered through the dusty blinds of the storage room as I finished packing my suitcase. I'd announced my early departure at breakfast, citing work responsibilities, a half-truth that no one challenged. Perhaps they sensed my need for space after yesterday's revelations, or perhaps they were still processing their recalibrated understanding of who I was. Standing in this room that had once been my sanctuary, I felt a strange peace. The space no longer held power over me, neither the childhood memories nor the adult rejection its conversion represented. It was simply a room in a house where I had once lived, no more definitive of my identity than any other temporary dwelling. I ran my fingers along the desk where I'd drawn my first architectural sketches, smiling at the memory of my 12-year-old determination. That girl had known something fundamental that I'd temporarily forgotten during years of seeking family validation. My worth wasn't dependent on their recognition of it. Grandmother Eleanor knocked softly before entering, her eyes taking in my packed bags. "Leaving us so soon, Ray?" she asked, though her tone suggested understanding rather than accusation. "I think it's time. Yesterday was a lot for everyone." She nodded, settling carefully on the edge of the bed. "You know, your grandfather always said family is like a mirror reflecting back what we believe about ourselves. Sometimes the reflection is distorted, and we have to find clearer mirrors." "You've always been my clearest mirror, Grandma," I said, sitting beside her, "because I've always seen you, really seen you." She patted my hand. "What you revealed yesterday took courage, not the success, though I'm immensely proud of that, but the willingness to stand in your truth without diminishing yourself, to make others comfortable, that's the real achievement." We sat in comfortable silence before she continued. "They may never fully understand or appreciate you the way you deserve. Some mirrors stay clouded no matter how much you polish them." "I know," I acknowledged. "I'm not expecting perfect understanding anymore, just basic respect." "Good," she said firmly. "Expecting what people cannot give only prolongs the hurt." We made plans for her to visit New York in the spring, a trip I would arrange completely, including a private flight to minimize her travel stress. As she hugged me goodbye, she whispered, "Your grandfather would be so proud of the woman you've become, not because of your success, but because of your integrity." Downstairs, my parents awaited with awkward formality. On the entry table sat a hastily wrapped package, clearly purchased yesterday, after the gift exchange revelation. "We got this for you," my mother said, too brightly. "We can't have you leaving without a Christmas gift." The wrapped box contained an expensive designer scarf, beautiful but impersonal, selected for its price tag rather than any connection to my personality or interests. Still, I thanked them sincerely, recognizing the gesture's importance, even if its execution remained telling. "I hope we can talk more regularly," my father said stiffly during our goodbye. "Perhaps you could keep us updated on your company's progress." "I prefer to talk about more than just work," I replied gently. "I'd like to know what's happening in your lives too, the everyday things, not just the achievements." They looked momentarily confused by this concept, connection based on being rather than doing, but nodded in agreement nonetheless. The drive to the airport felt like crossing a boundary between worlds. With each mile, the weight of unmet expectations and familiar disappointments lightened. By the time I boarded my flight to New York, I was breathing more easily than I had in days. Chloe waited at arrival, her familiar face and warm hug embodying the chosen family I'd built for myself. "Welcome home, boss lady," she teased, helping with my bags. "How was Operation Family Revelation?" "Complicated," I answered as we walked to her car, "but necessary." In the months that followed, small changes emerged in my family communications. My parents' calls became slightly more frequent, if still somewhat awkward. My father still predominantly asked about business, but occasionally inquired about my weekend plans or my new apartment. My mother still compared me to cousins and family friends, but with a new undertone of pride rather than disappointment. Emily and I established a monthly video call tradition, gradually building a sister relationship based on who we were as adults, rather than who we'd been as children. Daniel remained more distant, our interactions cordial but limited. Perhaps some relationships could only evolve so far. Most meaningful was my strengthened connection with grandmother Eleanor. Our weekly calls became a source of genuine wisdom and perspective as she shared family history I'd never heard, patterns of favoritism and emotional withholding that had shaped my father's childhood and subsequently trickled down to mine. "Understanding doesn't excuse, but it can help you heal," she observed during one such conversation. Breaking patterns requires seeing them clearly first. Taking her wisdom to heart, I began working with a therapist specializing in family dynamics. The work wasn't about assigning blame, but about untangling the complex emotional web that had shaped my self-perception for decades. Gradually, I learned to identify the internalized family voices that still sometimes whispered I wasn't enough, and to consciously replace them with truth. The most profound lesson emerged 6 months after that revealing Christmas. True family isn't always defined by blood. My chosen family, friends, colleagues, mentors, who genuinely saw and valued me, provided the consistent reflection and unconditional acceptance I'd sought from Boston all those years. This realization wasn't bitter, but liberating. I could maintain connections with my biological family within the boundaries of what was actually possible, while finding deeper fulfillment in relationships built on mutual respect and genuine seeing. The empire I'd revealed at Christmas wasn't ultimately urban canvas or its financial success. It was the internal sovereignty I'd built, the ability to define my worth based on my own values rather than external validation. The company could rise or fall, though it continued to thrive, but this core understanding of my intrinsic value remained unshakable. By the following December, when holiday planning began, I made a conscious choice. Rather than returning to Boston, I invited grandmother Eleanor to join me in New York for Christmas. To my surprise, Emily asked if she could come too, bringing her new husband. We created different traditions, ones built around connection rather than comparison, appreciation rather than accomplishment. My relationship with my parents remained a work in progress, improving in some ways, static in others. I accepted the limitations while remaining open to growth, understanding that full healing sometimes means acknowledging what isn't possible alongside what is. The greatest gift I gave myself wasn't financial success or family recognition. It was the freedom to live authentically, without diminishing my light to make others more comfortable with their shadows. This path wasn't always easy, but it was immeasurably more fulfilling than contorting myself to fit expectations that were never designed to accommodate who I truly was. So, if you're sitting there feeling overlooked or unseen by those who should value you most, know this: your worth isn't determined by their capacity to recognize it. The most powerful empire you can build isn't made of external achievements, but of internal sovereignty, the unshakable knowledge of who you are and what you bring to this world, regardless of who notices. Have you experienced being overlooked by family during holidays? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. How did you handle it, and what did you learn? Sometimes the most healing thing is knowing we're not alone in these experiences. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that their value isn't determined by family recognition. Thank you for witnessing my journey, and remember, the most important person who needs to see your worth is you.